It's Carlos Alfaro. I'm a member for the Arizona Drug Policy Forum. Our goal is to make events like these environments where we can come together and talk rationally and politely.
Good evening. My name is Sheila Polk. I'm the Yavapai County Attorney, and I'm also serving as Vice Chair of Arizona's for Responsible Drug Policy. We believe in creating environments in which all of our kids can thrive and succeed, and we know that marijuana is never part of that equation. To that end, we have two primary focuses. The first is to raise awareness about the harms of marijuana, and specifically about the harms of marijuana to the developing adolescent brain that is not fully developed until about the age of 25. We are also opposed to the legalization of marijuana in general, and specifically, we are opposed to this initiative that has been introduced by the Marijuana Policy Project. You know, most folks think that legalization of marijuana simply means your next door neighbor being able to smoke pot and grow his own plants. If that's what you think, I would strongly encourage you to read this initiative that is 22 pages, size 10 font. It's 22 pages of more government laws, more government rules and regulations, more government bureaucracy. It creates two new state agencies, the Marijuana Commission and an agency called the Department of Marijuana Licenses and Control. Each of those agencies, according to the 22 pages of new laws, has the ability to hold hearings and pass more rules and regulations. But really what's most disturbing to me is this initiative is about the legal sale of marijuana for profit. It is the commercialization of a new industry. And the backers of this initiative specifically sat down and picked the winners and the losers. They picked the folks who get to make the money off of this new for-profit industry. In the first 18 months, according to this initiative that they have written, it's only the folks who have the medical marijuana dispensaries and their friends, or the folks that they recommend, that can even apply for the licenses to sell retail marijuana. Our committee believes that responsible public policy discourages, not encourages, drug use. We believe that responsible drug policy decreases, not increases, drug use. And finally, we believe that the issue of legalization of marijuana should be informed by science and should not be driven by the handful of folks that stand to make millions of dollars with the sale for profit of marijuana. Thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank you so much. I'm going to be introducing our moderator for this evening, and that is Bram Resnick. He's an anchor and reporter for 12 News. He's also the moderator of 12 News Sunday Square Off, the Valley's leading political talk show. Bram has more than 25 years' experience in journalism for television and newspapers. His reporting includes extensive coverage of the Arizona Capitol, illegal immigration, the state economy, and the business community. He has a master's degree in journalism from Northwestern University and a bachelor's in English and history from McGill University. Please help me welcome Bram Resnick.
Thank you very much, Carlos, and thank you all. Let me get settled and we'll get going. I moved up here because I don't like having my back to an audience. You never know. You never know who's in the crowd. I like seeing an audience when we're debating, get a feel for it, get a sense of what you guys are thinking and how to keep things going. So thank you all for joining us here tonight. As Carlos said, I'm Bram Resnick. I cover politics for 12 News. I host our Sunday political talk show, Sunday Square Off. We are coming to you right now on 12news.com. This debate is live streaming on 12news.com. That is our website. We are at the AE England building on the ASU campus, just across Central Avenue from the main campus in downtown Phoenix. Tonight's 2015 Arizona Cannabis Debate is sponsored by the Arizona Drug Policy Forum. A ballot initiative unveiled 2 weeks ago will allow Arizonans to vote on legalizing marijuana for recreational uses. 150,000 signatures are needed to put it on the ballot. Now, let's meet our debaters. supporting the legalization of marijuana, Marc Victor. Mr. Victor is a criminal defense attorney in Chandler, former Libertarian candidate for the U.S. Senate. Speaking in opposition to legalizing marijuana, Seth Leibsohn, chair of the Arizonans for Responsible Drug Policy, the political action committee formed to oppose legalization. He's a radio host of 960 The Patriot, former vice president of the think tank Empower America, and chairman of the board of Not My Kid. You may applaud both of our debaters right now. And I will ask you to hold your applause, comments from the audience, whatever, until the very end of the debate to be respectful to both of our debaters here this evening. Here is how we're going to proceed this evening. We will have a roughly 40-minute debate, and then a 10 to 15 minutes for audience questions. As Carlos said, I think we're going to take questions on the note cards at your seats. We'll also take questions from the audience watching us on 12news.com with the hashtag AZCD15. Each speaker will give a 2-minute opening statement. I will then question them about issues connected to legalization. They can also question each other. It's a free-flowing conversation. It is not a timed conversation. I'm the referee. I want to keep it interesting, engaging, keep it moving, but make sure each debater gets their fair say in turn. So, we're going to start right now. Marc Victor, you have the first 2 minutes.
Thanks, Bram. Ladies and gentlemen, I rise tonight to support a free society. Said another way, I think you ought to be in charge of yourself. That's because I think you own yourself. And owning yourself, I'll admit, it's a big responsibility. It means you get to decide what is good for you. You get to decide how to use your own body, or your property, or your money, or your time. You get to weigh the risks for yourself. You get to determine the risk-reward ratio for yourself of any activity, not just smoking marijuana. And you also get the consequences of those choices. This is what a free society is about. It's not about me weighing that stuff for you and then forcing my opinion upon you because I've decided that. I'm not here to tell you how to run your life. I've got some suggestions. If you ask me, I'll tell you. But that's not my role. You ought to have the final say on your life. And the drug war is just simply incompatible with a free society. It's a war against peaceful people. It's about some people imposing their conclusions upon others by force. Freedom can be scary, it can be intimidating, and some people aren't ready for freedom. That's why they want a babysitter running their lives. And our government has become a babysitter, right? That's the nanny state. The nanny state is also incompatible with a free society. Conservatives claim to want individual responsibility. They claim to want small government. But they support this giant nanny state social program called the drug war. Free people do not need nor do they want babysitters. So don't be afraid of your freedom. It can also be rewarding, wonderfully empowering. The essence of freedom is the very right to choose for yourself. It's the right to control the course of your own life. But freedom isn't the right to do whatever you want to do. It's the right to control your body, property, money, and time, not someone else's. Isn't that a good place to draw the legal line? You get to do what you want with your property, not somebody else's. Of course, some people lack the capacity to exercise freedom. Minors, people who are incompetent. I'm talking about competent adults peacefully running their own lives. That's what I support. Some people judge marijuana as unsafe or unhealthy or unwise or immoral or bad. That's fine. I say to those people, don't use it. Don't let your kids use it. But what right do you have to impose your judgments upon other people? I say you have none. Thank you.
Once again, hold your applause.
Thank you very much. Everyone can hear me. I want to express my appreciation to ASU and for all of you who have showed up, because I think this is a very serious debate about very serious issues. And I too believe in freedom, and I too believe in representative democracy. And I think the outline we heard just now, if it were taken to its logical conclusion, would indeed lead to a less free society. We heard that you had the right to do with what you want, your body, your business, your property, your money. Taken to its logical conclusion, this very philosophy would mean no civil rights laws, no food safety laws. We're back with DDT. We would not be banning red dye number 2. We would have bovine products in our makeup. We would have mercury in our makeup. We would have any number of things that the FDA and civil society has said, you know what? We want to maximize freedom, but this society has an interest in safety as well. So here tonight, debating the issue of marijuana, I would put it to you this way. If someone came to you and said marijuana legalization would be a very good idea for your community, for your household, for your city, for your country, what might you do? Where might you go to look? Well, you might go to the single most respected medical journal in the world, since we are talking about a drug, and that would be the New England Journal of Medicine. And you might look at a long peer-reviewed piece they wrote and published last year under serious scientific conditions. And you might find out what the short-term consequences of marijuana use are. Impaired short-term memory, impaired motor coordination, altered judgments, and in high doses, paranoia and psychosis. Effects of long-term use: addiction, altered brain development, poor educational outcomes, cognitive impairment, diminished life satisfaction, symptoms of chronic bronchitis, increased risk of chronic psychosis. You might then ask, well, it's a doctor's situation, it's a medical situation. Might I get a second? Might I get a third? Might I get a fourth opinion? And you would go to a series of peer-reviewed scientific journals that have looked at the use of marijuana in a serious way over the course of the past 2 years. And you would go to the American College of Pediatrics, which just this week wrote that marijuana is not harmless. Indeed, recent research shows it is addicting, has adverse effects upon adolescent brains, and is a risk for both cardiovascular and respiratory disease. You might go to the Journal of Affective Disorders, which just published earlier this year, Cannabis Use and Mania Symptoms, a systematic review and meta-analysis showing that there is a threefold risk of new symptoms of psychosis from the use of marijuana. You might go to England and look at their New England Journal, their version of it, which is The Lancet, which has published 2 pieces in the last 2 years. Proportions of patients in South London with first episode psychosis attributable to use of high-potency cannabis. And I could give you study after study after study. I won't go on, but I will say this, because we'll have time in Q&A, and I'm sure Bram will ask more questions on this. When you go to legalize a substance that has been previously illegal, you need to ask yourself, are we going to increase the danger in society or decrease it? And if you increase the danger to society, is that really a freer and better society? I say it is not.
All right, thank you very much.
Can I respond to that?
You'll have a chance to respond right now. You say you get to decide, folks out here get to decide, you get the consequences, and yet this initiative will construct government, judicial, public safety, laws, put all these things in place that affect all of us, that we pay for. How is it that if marijuana is legalized, it's only the individual who's affected, when it appears to be at least all of us, all these structures are in place?
Well, first off, I noted that Yavapai County Attorney Sheila Polk got up here and complained about how long the initiative that was just filed, an initiative to regulate marijuana like alcohol. It sounds pretty long to me. I would prefer that it would just simply say, thou shalt make no law regulating marijuana at all. That would be fine with me. The only reason it's as long as it is because it's a step towards legalization. It's a step towards letting the individual decide for him or herself. Look, there are lots of dangerous things in our society, right? Ever heard of alcohol? Alcohol is a huge problem. Tobacco is a huge problem. Sugar is a huge problem, right? Diabetes, number 3 cause of death and rising. Mayor Bloomberg says we ought to ban big sugary drinks. Why is he wrong? He's right that they're really bad for you. There are lots of studies that former Mayor Bloomberg, could cite, just like Seth just cited about marijuana. There's lots of studies on both sides of marijuana. I'm not aware of any that say sugar is not bad for you. But are we going to ban sugar? Is that what free society is about? The government decides what's harmful, and then the government bans it. The government is your nanny. I'll admit, there are people who use substances who can affect other people. And when they do, that's where the law ought to get involved. Until it does, it is not the place of government.
Yeah. Well, we might have had our just very first agreement of the evening. If I heard Marc Victor correctly, he does not actually support the language in the initiative that's been filed. Is that correct, Marc?
Not correct.
Oh, I thought you said you didn't support what this law said.
It's not what I would write, it's not what I would prefer, but it's better than what we have now.
2 new government commissions, a new tax structure, and fingerprinting from the state that goes up to the FBI. That's your version of freedom and libertarianism?
It's better than being the world's leader in incarceration rates.
Fair enough. So if I do understand,
please hold your thoughts.
so if I do understand Marc correctly, then this is just a first step towards full legalization, not just of marijuana, but based on everything you said, also heroin, cocaine, and meth.
I'll be happy to
Hold on.
respond.
Might show folks at 12news.com to hear you. And if you're
Yeah, it's a first step. I want to see freedom. I want to see people decide for themselves what to put in their own bodies, and that includes everything that one can put in his or her own body for competent adults.
So
it's
what-
not about what Seth thinks is okay.
No.
It's what the owner of the body thinks is okay.
Or it's what our elected representatives think is okay, because there was in fact a law that we are operating under, which was passed unanimously by the United States Senate and with only 7 dissenting votes in the United States House of Representatives, including every delegate from Arizona and such libertarians as Barry Goldwater Jr. And that is how laws are done in this society, and they're not what Marc Victor says, and they're not what I say. We go through a plan and a process in what's called representative democracy. If this is the very first step towards the legalization, as I just heard, of not only marijuana but heroin and cocaine, then I think we're going to find ourselves very quickly not being the leader of the free world in any sense whatsoever. And everything I heard from these wonderful students about wanting no more violence in this city and no more violence in this country is going to go in the exact opposite direction if you have Marc Victor telling you that we want to legalize heroin and cocaine. Let me tell you something. Cartels and criminal enterprises thrive where there is legalized drugs, legalization of drugs. What legalization of drugs means is consumption. And the only way a cartel can thrive, and the only reason violence can thrive around a city with legalized drugs is where it is available. Where it is not available, they cannot exist, they cannot thrive in profusion, and that is why in Colorado they have not ceased and desisted, and that is why in Colorado there are still arrests, and there are still arrests in the state of Washington, D.C., in the state of Washington, which is also legalized. My question about the bill is this, because I think there is more to it than what Marc says. Marc is being honest. He says it's a first step towards the legalization of heroin, cocaine, and meth. If that's the society you want, let's vote on that. But I think there's something more to it than that. I think the people who wrote this law know what I said about the dangers of marijuana. And the reasons I think they know that is because they contain in this law restrictions to keeping 1 ounce of ownership. You can only own 1 ounce. You can only possess 1 ounce. Why not 5? Why not 10? Why not 15? And why, by the way, do they only allow it to be sold in certain places, in certain facilities, in certain dispensaries? If it's supposed to be like alcohol, as it says on its front page, why would it not be sold in Safeway? Why would it not be sold at Fry's? It's because they know it's dangerous. And that is them being the prohibitionists, and that is them telling you what you can do with your bodies. All I want to do is keep things the way they are, which is a dangerous substance out of the hands of our children. In Arizona, we have about 14% of our youth using marijuana on a regular basis. You make this the law of the state, and you're going to see that skyrocket. That we don't need, that nobody needs.
I just want to come back to something Seth said earlier. Try to keep it moving. Seth, a little earlier, you said this, one of your themes has been this would increase the danger to our society. One of the things people are worried about now is the danger at our border, Arizona, being a gateway to marijuana nationally. Cartels bringing marijuana in. I know the thinking behind legalization, some of the thinking is you legalize, make it legal, folks don't have to go to the black market, you put the cartels out of business, or at least out of that business. What's your response?
Yeah, markets are pretty smart.
And one thing, people that might have...
Markets are pretty smart, and cartels are pretty smart. They're involved in the market, and they're involved in more than just the legalization of drugs. They're involved in more than just the peddling and selling of drugs. They're involved in the bootlegging of movies, they're involved in the bootlegging of music, they're involved in a whole series of industries. And by the way, it's interesting to me that the millions they make off the bootlegging of movies, I hear no one in the Hollywood industry saying, let's make that legal and put them out of business. Isn't that kind of interesting? But to answer your question specifically, Bram, if what you said was true, if that thesis were true, we would see it in Colorado. But we haven't. In fact, 40% of the marijuana that is sold in Colorado is still sold on the black market. There's another problem. Colorado has engaged itself in being the black market, and that is why it is being sued by its neighboring states of Nebraska and Oklahoma because of the influx of marijuana and traffic issues that are going on in those states. If Arizona wants to invite a lawsuit from its neighboring states, that law is a good way to go in, and too will be sued. The cartels in Mexico, by the way, are now sending heroin up because they don't have the same business they had with marijuana in Colorado. So we have made the border not less dangerous, but indeed more dangerous. And I think we ought to be suing Colorado too.
Where to begin? First off, wow, did I really hear an argument from a conservative that talked about, well, the legislature passes it and that's how we do things. So I'm sure Seth doesn't have any problem with things like Obamacare, things like gun control, things that are passed by the legislatures, the wise sages in the legislature. Really, is that the argument, whatever is passed? I got news. The people get to sponsor initiatives here in Arizona and vote them into law, and that's exactly what's going to happen. I'm going to get to Colorado in a second, but I want to get to cartels. Yeah, I don't have to speculate about what the drug dealers think. I've been a criminal defense attorney for 21 years. I've represented lots of drug dealers. I've represented big-time drug dealers in the federal courts. I've been in the federal courts in Phoenix and in Tucson and all through our nation. And I get to sit down and talk to the cartel people and ask them questions about how they feel about the drug war. What do you think they say? They love the drug war. They are so worried about legalization. I've asked a couple to come on my radio show anonymously and say it's true. We're threatened by this whole legalization movement. We hope it stops. You know why they didn't come on? It wasn't because they were afraid of being identified. It was because they said, you know what, Mark? We don't want to help you make that argument. These are wise businessmen. How many times have we seen bullets flying through the air because the Miller guy and the Budweiser guy just can't get along? We don't see that, do we? Why don't we see that? Why don't we see alcohol cartels shooting it up in the streets and sneaking it across the border and doing all this violence? Why might it be that we don't see that? It's because if they get into a dispute, they go to court, right? We don't have little flunkies who are running alcohol all over the place because big corporations do it, and it doesn't bother me one bit to think that maybe marijuana might be sold someday in Walmart or Target or whatever. It's really not a harmful substance. Let's talk Colorado for a minute. Are you kidding me? The people in Colorado don't have any buyer's remorse at all. And if you look at what their own state statistics say, you can believe whatever you want. But here's what Colorado says. According to the state of Colorado's Department of Revenue, the first 10 months of legal marijuana sales have resulted in nearly $40 million in tax revenue. The city of Denver saw a decrease in violent crime in the first 11 months of 2014, following a similar trend in 2013. And by the way, violent crime is down all over the place, especially in the medical marijuana states. State by state by state, violent crime is down. It doesn't stop there. Statewide traffic fatalities continue to decline, according to the Colorado Department of Transportation. Upwards of $8 million have been allotted to fund youth education and drug prevention efforts, and the state is enjoying economic growth and the lowest unemployment rate in years. Why is that? Because we're taking the money out of the black market, out of the hands of the dangerous people who use as their tools AR-15s, and we're putting it in the hands of responsible businessmen. It sounds terrible, doesn't it?
I do this as moderator, just reporting the story on this on the 6 o'clock news. There are other statistics that show citations for public intoxication are up. Tickets.
Can I hear you, buddy?
Can you hear me now? Other side of my chest? Okay. Citations, how's that? How about I put on my lower lip? So citations are up. Public intoxication, marijuana DUIs are up. But I want to talk about the tax piece, because that's really interesting. The total tax collection is $60 million. This is presented as a boon, potential boon for our budget, $60 million. $60 million is 0.3% of Colorado's annual budget of about $28 billion. So, where's the support that this is where's the evidence that this is or could be a financial boom? And I'll start, Seth, I'll start with you.
Yeah. Marc can throw his statistics around, and I have other statistics too. Interesting, most of his were about adults. Mine is mostly having to do with students in schools and children and teens and adolescents. Dropouts up, expulsions up, teen arrests up, teen driving accidents up in Colorado. Let's talk about the financials. They predicted $100 million. They were about 42% off. And no, not everyone in Colorado is happy with what's going on. There's a lot of buyer's remorse, including from the governor in Colorado, who said just this year, if I could wave a magic wand, I would make recreational marijuana go away. There are cities that accepted recreational marijuana that are now trying to push back, just like is going on in other places that have done this. There is buyer's remorse from the Netherlands to London to Colorado. Places that have done this are learning to regret it. They have come to regret it. You can talk about the 40 million or the 60 million that may come in. I want to see what's going out. I want to see the numbers that are going out on mental health services treatment. I want to see the numbers that are going out on Medicaid and Medicare. I want to see the numbers that are going out on fatal accidents and car crashes. I will tell you, whenever you tax a substance that is a danger to society, You spend more in dealing with the falling out of those dangers than you take in. Give you the example of Arizona. We take in about $70 million a year. Of $70 million a year in tax revenue on alcohol. We spend about $130 million a year, public money. This is not all costs included, just your tax dollars at work in dealing with the treatment from the problems that come from that. If you want to expend more money and have a net loss to the state, you will put a new dangerous drug into the market stream into the state. You will affect more children, and you will be creating a problem in order to solve a problem that you will never be able to solve. Never be able to solve. $35 million to the state in revenue versus hundreds of millions of dollars in treatment. No, thank you.
Honestly, I don't really care if it doesn't generate any extra money for the government. The government gets way too much money anyways. I wish it wasn't taxed at all. You want to talk about Amsterdam? Are you kidding me? I've been there 4 times. And I've spoken to the Amsterdam police on several occasions. I asked them as a student of the criminal justice system. I asked them as a defense attorney. Hey, street cop in Amsterdam, how are the laws here which are for legalization? How does that affect violent crime? They're laughing at us. They think we're so ridiculous. They don't have any problems at all with it. What the average person over there will tell you is the only reason we're having issues with the drug war is because the United States pressures us. The people in Jamaica say the same thing, to not legalize drugs. But you know what? Freedom's coming. This train has already left the station. It doesn't matter whether it passes in 2016 or not, because it will pass eventually. Freedom cannot be stopped. Marijuana will be legal. What we need to be talking about is a much broader question in terms of, are we going to be in charge of our lives, or is Seth and Sheila, are they going to decide what's harmful for you and what's best for your children? Or are the parents going to get to decide what's best for their children? I find it interesting that we're talking about alcohol. Far, far bigger problem. I'm not aware of one person ever who's died from a marijuana overdose. I've never had one domestic violence case come into my office in 21 years that arose from a marijuana situation. I've had countless alcohol situations, but all that notwithstanding, why is it that non-alcoholic beers are getting more and more popular during a period of time when it's completely legal? The answer is, it's not the government that decides rates of use. It's not even whether it's legal or illegal. It's the market that decides. Kids have always smoked marijuana, and kids will always continue to smoke marijuana, whether it's legal or illegal. The question here is, are they going to go to jail and prison? Are we going to ruin their lives over doing it? And are we going to enrich the people in the black market for selling it to them? I think that's been a horrible idea. We've had the drug war since the late 60s. I want Seth to tell us how we're going to win. Are we close to winning yet? I want to know what Seth's plan is to win this stupid drug war.
Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but they're not entitled to their own facts. And here's February of this year from Newsweek. Holland's new marijuana laws are changing old Amsterdam, and I'm just going to quote and tell you that the government has forced coffee shops where marijuana is sold to choose between alcohol and pot, and it is recriminalizing things that used to be much more laxly enforced. Last sentence, Holland's passive-aggressive policy doesn't stop illicit activity or drug tourism or make anyone safer, and that is why we are making a reverse. In England, paper that did the biggest endorsement for the reclassification of marijuana issues an apology after what they found out, and they have reclassified marijuana back upwards because their experiment failed. I will answer Marc's question about when we will win in the drug war. We started to. In 1979, that was the high water mark of drug use in this country, and you can see it from this graph. And this country got serious about dealing with illegal drugs, and we cut drug use in half. That is public policy success by any definition. And it was because of a combination of, yes, law enforcement, but also Hollywood and also industry. and also ads on TV, and also a message that drugs are harmless, and not a message that they are not harmless. The message that they are not harmless is what leads to adolescent use. And if Marc is interested in anything, I would hope he would be interested in the prevention of more teens and adolescents using marijuana, because where it is more legal, where it is medicalized, and where it is recreational, you see youth use going up. If that's what you want in a society, if you want to deal with more of that, fine. But now look what happened once we let up on the message that drugs are dangerous. The numbers started going back up again. So if you can find me any other policy where we have cut use and danger 50% like we did with this, I'll buy you another ticket to Amsterdam. This is the definition of public policy success, Marc. We aren't losing it, we gave up on it.
You know, I think that it's interesting that we do such a great job singing songs about the land of the free and saluting the flag and touting how free we are while we lead the entire world in incarceration rates. Do you know we got other peaceful human beings, our brothers and sisters who have done nothing but peaceful activity in regards to marijuana, who are right now, this second, rotting away in cages. Even animals shouldn't be in cages like that. How can we be both the land of the free and the land of the incarcerated at the same time? It doesn't make sense, and we need to face reality. If you want to be the land of the incarcerated, let's just keep doing what we're doing. Let's keep destroying the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment in the name of saving people from themselves. How many people got to come into my office from ASU? I get people in honors programs at ASU doing well, but got caught because they had a joint in the dorm, and now they're going to be kicked out of school, and now they're going to be saddled with a felony, and now they're going to lose their financial aid. That doesn't sound like a good plan to save people from themselves. And I'm not interested in messages from government. Until we get our parenting under control in this country, we are not going to get our country back. We, the collective, we have been horrible parents because we're relying on the stupid government to send messages to our kids. My kids don't look to the government for messages. They get messages from me. I'm the parent. Let's let parents be parents. I tell my kids it doesn't matter what the government says in terms of, a great example might be driver's license. The government says that my kids can drive. My kids know that just because the government says that doesn't mean it's okay to drive until dad says it's okay to drive. That's called being a parent. Just because the government says marijuana is legal doesn't mean that we as parents have to sit back and say, oh, well, I guess I got to tell my kid it's legal. That notwithstanding, 20 states in Washington, D.C. now have effective medical marijuana laws. In 15 of those states, government surveys have produced before and after data on teen marijuana use. In 10 states, the data shows overall decrease. Fewer kids are using marijuana in the medical marijuana states than in before medical marijuana came in. And there was lots. I can quote every single state for you. The data, which is government data, shows in 2/3 of the states where marijuana is more legally available, fewer kids are using it. Well, what about that? Maybe it's just less taboo, right? I could just, and I'll make this point, I'll hand it back over to Seth. I can tell you this, I don't drink any alcohol today because I personally find it unhealthy and I don't like it, and so I don't put it in my body. But you know what? I had more alcohol when I was under 21 than I ever had when I was over 21, right? Didn't we all have the experience of turning 21, showing the ID, marching into the bar and saying, I can drink legally now? And then shortly after that, it just wasn't a big deal anymore. I think we ought to turn marijuana into, it's just not a big deal anymore, which is exactly what they say in Amsterdam, where the teen usage is even lower than here.
What's the usage of teens in Colorado? It's 38% higher than the national average. Use of teens in Colorado has skyrocketed. If that's the model you want here, then great. If you want to see tens of thousands of more high school students in this state using marijuana, then we'll just follow the Colorado model. Absolutely, that's the way to go. It will end up costing this state more, not just in money, not just in finances, but in a lot of human wreckage of families that have known how to struggle with addiction, that don't know how to struggle with addiction, and don't do quite as good a job, perhaps, as Mark Victor's family does. That is the reason there is government in this society. That's why James Madison spoke about auxiliary precautions in Federalist 51. He said, if men were angels, there would be no need for government. But because men are not angels, there is. And it's for our public health, and it's for our public safety. And government has a role in doing that. And if you want to see tens of thousands of more students in Arizona addicted to a dangerous substance, his is the prescription. I think part of the problem is this. I think part of the problem is people our age remember the marijuana that was used when we were in college. I think that most people do not understand that the strengths have changed and it's practically an entirely new drug. The marijuana in the 70s and 80s and into the 1990s had a THC that psychoactive content of about 3 to 5%. The average is now 18%, with strains going into the 20s and even 30s and even higher. It's an entirely different drug, doing entirely different things to people. And I don't think enough people understand that, or appreciate it, or are reading the government reports, and the scientific reports, and listening to the medical professionals. There's not a single professional medical organization that says recreationalizing and legalizing marijuana is a good idea. I think when we're talking about making a drug more widely available so that it can be more widely used, it's still a good idea to listen to your doctor.
I have a question for you, Mark. We're getting near the end of the questions and moving on to the audience questions. I just have a few more little points to round out.
Can I do 30-second response first?
How about I ask you the question, do your 30
All right.
seconds, and then respond to my question. I wonder what you do think about the evidence regarding marijuana's effect on teenagers and adolescents. The National Institute on Drug Abuse NIDA says studies suggest marijuana has the strongest long-term impact on young users whose brains are still busy building new connections and maturing in other ways. Also from NIDA, regarding the question, is marijuana a gateway drug? On the mind of many parents. Quote, most epidemiological studies report early marijuana initiates increased vulnerability for drug abuse and addiction to other substances of abuse later in life. Your response?
Look, first off, we want to talk about some stats in Colorado. Here's the Colorado government stats on teen use. 10.72% for 2011. Arizona, where any amount, no matter how small, is still a felony. And prosecutors, just like Sheila Polk in her office and Bill Montgomery here, routinely charge 2 felonies for 1 marijuana cigarette, right? The marijuana inside and the wrapping paper on the outside. That's paraphernalia. What does that kind of scheme produce? 22.9% teen usage. Double the rate of teen usage in Arizona than in Colorado. If you really want to talk about the founding fathers, really, the same founding fathers who grew hemp on a regular basis, don't tell me they weren't smoking marijuana. The same founding fathers who absolutely provided no authority for the federal government to run a drug war. None. The entire federal government drug war is entirely unconstitutional. Where on earth is the amendment to give the federal government power to run a drug war just like they did for alcohol? It's an absolute outrage. Where were the drug laws for the founding fathers? Do you think that James Madison and John Hancock and Thomas Jefferson, if they were right here, would be agreeing with the nanny state that is being promoted today? I submit to you, they would be disgusted by what has happened to their free society. In terms of whether marijuana is harmful for kids, look, I could quote 10 studies that show it's not. I have studies here from Johns Hopkins and other places. But the point is, that's the job of the parent. It's the parent's job. Lots of things are harmful for kids, right? Lots of things. People people in New York and Boston, where I'm from, say things like, simply having a firearm in your house is harmful because kids can get it. Yeah, there are examples where things like that can happen. Kids can get a hold of alcohol, kids get a hold of prescription drugs, which, by the way, prescription drugs account for 99% of all deaths. All the illegal drugs put together account for 1%. What are we even talking about here? And marijuana accounts for 0. Why are we even having a debate which on its face is ridiculous? It's been a disaster for our country and it needs to end. And it's going to end.
Seth, I have a question for you. Something you alluded to earlier, and Marc has as well.
Should we use the 2 mics?
Yeah, whatever.
One mic's fine, yeah. There are a lot of questions about the fairness of our drug laws. As Marc says, many people being put behind bars for crimes like marijuana possession. I know she will disagree. She's written op-eds on some of that, I think. So forgive me if I get some of the numbers right. But in general, the perception is, as Marc states, that many people are being put behind bars for offenses that shouldn't be punished by prison time. So do you believe reform of our laws, particularly laws that apply to marijuana possession, is necessary?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things involved in that question, and they go to actually some of what Marc said too. It's increasingly difficult to have a debate where facts are made up. It's increasingly difficult to do that. And the numbers he used about Arizona youth, I have no idea where they come. According to the Arizona Youth Survey, 14% of our teens are using marijuana. And if you look at what is being done, what has happened in Colorado, you don't have to take my word for it, just take the headline from the New York Times. Marijuana use has increased. The state with the second highest percentage of regular marijuana users as it began legalizing the drug. If Arizona wants to compete to be the state for the second largest users, we'll follow in Colorado's tracks and we'll pass this legislation. The fraction of people who are monthly users who are in fact daily users has gone way up, according to Marc Kleiman, who helped them write their bill, a professor of public policy at UCLA. You want to see use go up, pass this bill, and mimic Colorado. When it comes to crime, it's very easy to pound the table and talk in theory about high numbers. Let me give you some numbers, and let me tell you what the practice in Arizona is. We incarcerate in this state something like 40,000 plus. There are 40,000 plus prisoners in the state of Arizona. Please raise your hand if you can tell me how many are in prison in Arizona as first-time possession offenders of marijuana. The answer is 13. The answer is 13 out of 40 plus thousand. If you are caught with marijuana possession for the first time in Arizona, you do not go to jail. It has been the law in Arizona not to go to jail.
Please.
The state passed an initiative over 10 years ago that says you do not go to jail as a first-time possessor of marijuana. You don't go for a second time. You only go if you have violated the law more than twice. And let me tell you something about law enforcement and drugs. For anyone who has spent any time with families of addicted children, or families who suffer from drug or substance abuse, or has been to any 12-step meetings, or has gone to any rehab centers, you will find out that the vast majority of people who are in rehab, the vast majority of people who are in rehab, got there because of their confrontation with the law. It is the law that put them there, and most of them will say, in an odd way, but in a very, very real and true way, the day they got arrested was the best day of their life looking back. Because
Seth ought to try having a good day. Seth ought to take the sample of trying a good day before he makes the argument that free people ought to be put in cages. That was an outrageously immoral, disgusting statement.
it's absolutely a true statement, and I'm not going to let him end with a rhetorical slam like that, which is simply untrue. It's absolutely true what I say. And if you want less people to be in rehab from drug addiction, you will get rid of one of the most effective ways that helps them get there and gets them on the path to sobriety. It's a very hard thing to achieve. It's an extremely hard thing to achieve. but families who have gone through this, obviously families who are not as protective of their kids as Mark's, know exactly what I'm talking about.
All right, I got to respond. I'll take that. Okay, I'm going to ask, this is the last time I'm asking, respect for the speakers that goes for each of the speakers. Please. Security, good security. That's the last warning. One more outburst, you're gone. Respect for the speakers, it's the only thing we ask of you. Please.
You know, all I can think of is like during the Vietnam War, we burning down their villages to help them, right? Putting them in jail to help them. Look, this is not Seth's fault because he's not in the trenches like I am. He doesn't really understand. Tom Dean's out there. He's a fellow defense attorney. He understands. Let me just tell you how it really works here in Arizona. Oh, you didn't have one marijuana cigarette, you had 3? Oh, well, that's a sales case. That's not just a possession case. You had a little bit that was more than just a one-time use. That's a sales case. Oh, you were driving it down in your car, now you're transporting. An officer undercover comes up and says, hey, can I get some of that? I'll give you $10 for it. Is that okay? Now it's a hand-to-hand sales. You peacefully had a gun somewhere you were in possession of, well, you had a small amount of marijuana. Now it's a class 4, misconduct with weapons. To say that people don't go to prison for possession of marijuana is just an outrage, especially if you have priors for other things. Or what if there's a minor somewhere in the area? Now all of a sudden it's a much more serious crime. Our laws are so broad that for the government to allege a sales case, a transportation for sale, one of these things that elevates it above and beyond a simple possession case happens all the time. And because we have mandatory prison for people who have one stupid prior, and our law has been interpreted now, even if you got a 20-year-old prior, you're looking at mandatory prison. So you can't take the chance of going in front of a jury because the jury may just say, you know what, we think it was a sales case. And that's why people plead guilty and they wind up getting on probation. And we talk about counseling. What if they don't want to stop smoking marijuana? What if they want to continue to smoke marijuana because they're free people and they claim to be sovereign over their body? Then what happens is they get a violation of probation. Then they get another violation of probation. And then they wind up going to prison. That's what really happens. So don't tell me, as one of the leading incarcerators, the leading incarcerator in the world, and one of the leaders in incarceration in this state, that our ridiculous policies, where it's 2 felonies for 1 marijuana cigarette, isn't anti-freedom. Seth never answered my question about what he's going to do to win the drug war. Are we going to put everybody in prison? Is that the plan? I would like to have an answer to my question. I want to know what it is that Seth proposes to do to eradicate this plant that grows naturally from the earth. Please answer the question.
Well, I did when I showed you statistics and I showed you the numbers from 1979 to 1992 when we got used down by half in this country by not saying the kinds of things you're saying, which is that these things are harmless. We taught children and we taught families that these things are harmful. And use went down because one of the biggest predictors of use, especially adolescent and teen use, is perception of harm. One of the best ways to make perception of harm go down is to legalize and talk about its harmlessness. When every scientific study that has looked at it seriously says it is in fact dangerous. Marc said he had studies that said marijuana is not harmful. I'd like to see one. I know of no single study that says marijuana is without harm. If you want to create more harm in this society, you will legalize a dangerous substance that every medical association agrees is dangerous. There is on one side the argument that Marc is making about some dystopia we live in where people are not free because they get arrested if, to use the example I heard him say, you have drugs in your car with a child. Put me on record as someone who wants a person with drugs in their car with their child arrested.
I don't want them arrested for that at all, because there's no danger to the minor at all. There's as much danger to the minor as having a geranium in the car. I've never heard of a situation where some kid reached over and started eating marijuana. This is ridiculous argument. We're going to just say because there's a kid involved, we're going to pick another free human being up off the planet and throw them in a cage? Have we lost all sense of rationality? I don't understand this argument. It doesn't make any sense to me. Look, first of all, I'll give you a study. The federal government, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, conducted extensive testing because they really wanted to find lots of problems with impaired driving and marijuana, and that's not at all what they found. What they found was the opposite. It doesn't have a substantial connection at all in terms of the way you drive, but that's not our law here in Arizona at all. All we got to show is some trace amount of THC or the active metabolite. In fact, it used to be the inactive metabolite. And all these crazy prosecutors still wanted people to go to jail, even though they had an inactive metabolite in their system that everybody agreed had no effect whatsoever on the driving. The rational thought has left the room on the other side of the argument. You want to start criminalizing things that are harmful? We could start with tobacco. We could start with saturated fats. We could start with sugar. The world is filled with dangerous things, right? Filled with them. Why don't we let the individuals decide on this question? And I will tell you this. Reasonable minds do disagree. I can load up this place with doctors and scientists who will come in one after the next and say, you know what? In the parade of things that are harmful to one's body, marijuana is so far down the list you can't even see it.
And they'll say that about lead paint, and they'll say that about...
Yes, it's true. And they'll say that about lead paint, which is farther down the list. And they'll say that about asbestos, which is farther down the list. And they can go down and down and down. And yes, Mark is right. We have a lot of damage in society due to the legalization of alcohol and tobacco. But that ship has long ago sailed. I'm here to say our society is full enough with those problems. We don't need to add a third.
Okay, gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to take a deep breath for a moment. Let me think on this. And we're going to do role play. What is the best argument from the other side? What is your opponent's best argument?
The best argument is that people who use marijuana are really scary, and they're very dangerous. And you know, once you start using marijuana, the next thing that's going to happen is you're going to be using heroin and methamphetamine. And soon you'll be bashing your neighbor over the head with a club, and you'll be taking your gun out and shooting your neighbor. And so the only way to deal with these people is to warehouse them away for decades in prison, where their horrible activities of the gateway drug, marijuana, can absolutely be stopped, because there's no way to rehabilitate these horrible people who enjoy ingesting a substance that everybody who has used it knows makes you peaceful. It's got to be a thing.
You can take that question anywhere you like.
Sure. Since he didn't answer it, I won't. I'll just respond. That he hasn't quoted me once tonight. Every argument he made was a chimera of something I didn't say. I have said nothing in favor of my position that he has quoted or responded to. Not one. And the dystopia he painted is not the one I'm talking about. And the dystopia he painted is not the world we live in. And it's not the state I know. And it just doesn't sound, to me, like we're living in Somalia the way he describes it. I think you can believe him or you can believe your own two eyes. The reason I am against making a dangerous substance more available is because it will, like tobacco and alcohol, get to our adolescents and get to our teens, as alcohol and tobacco do. And anyone who's involved in education, or health, or public health, or psychiatry, or rehabilitation knows that their hands are pretty full with those things. We just finished a big debate in this state about funding for education, funding for places like this very place, ASU. What's the point? Truly, what is the point of any of those debates and all that money we spend on early childhood education and early childhood nutrition and early childhood health education, if we're going to put into their stream and into their hands and into their brains a substance that every serious scientific journal says will harm them, and in some cases irreparably, you do not make things worse in this country and in this state. As Shakespeare said, you can't say this is the worst if you're still able to say this is the worst. The point is, things can get worse. And in states that have experimented with it, and in countries that have experimented with it, they got it. We only have one chance with each child. I don't want to risk it. I don't want to risk it. And those of us who have spent time in rehab facilities, Mark, you don't know what I do with my time, and that is what I do with my time. Those who have seen it see the ravages of drug abuse. And marijuana is the second substance that every single mental health facility is getting admissions for. The first is alcohol. You want to see marijuana be the first? Make it like alcohol.
We can go to our audience questions now.
What time are we going to?
It is,
Not that this hasn't been fun.
it is 5 of 8. We are likely to end at 5 after 8. What financial stake does law enforcement have in keeping marijuana illegal? Mark Victor.
What vested interest does law
What
enforcement?
financial stake does law enforcement have in keeping marijuana illegal?
Okay, well, first off, I don't think it's right to generalize all people who are in law enforcement any more than I would generalize everybody in any group. I will give you some insights, though, from my personal experiences, having sat across on many occasions from DEA agents. I'm sitting across the table from them before the festivities begin, and we're sort of off the record, and I say, hey, man, how's that drug war thing going? Gonna win anytime soon? And they generally laugh, and I laugh too, because we all know it's a complete joke. We all know. I mean, other than Seth, I'm not aware of anybody who makes the argument, maybe she will too, I don't know, but I'm not aware of anybody who makes the argument that this war on peaceful citizens somehow is ever going to end, that we're ever going to eradicate this plan from the earth. But eventually the DEA agent says to me, they shrug their shoulders and say, it's a job. It's a job, and I'm X number of years away from retirement. How do I compete with an argument like that, right? What if I'm a private prison and I make my money from bodies that are shipped down to my facility to be warehoused? What we've done is we've created a huge industry called the justice system, and it's growing out of control like a disgusting virus. We're forever building more prisons. They're packed and overcrowded on the day they open. We're mistreating people in them because there are so many people. If you think the abominations under Sheriff Joe's watch are unique, you're wrong. I've been doing cases all over the country. This is a huge industry, and lots of people in it have a vested financial interest in continuing it. I will point this out. I suspect there is not one person in this room who makes more money off of the drug war than me. I make more money from the drug war than everybody in this room, I'd be willing to bet. And yet, I want it ended. Because freedom is more important than money. It's more important than money. And until we realize that, shame on us for referring to ourselves as the land of the free.
I can't really speak to the exact part of that question. I can speak to my organization, which none of us take any salary whatsoever. We all do it on our volunteer time. This land of the free business and the fact that we're not allowed to use drugs is just so curious to me. I just don't know very many people who don't think they live in the freest nation in the history of the world, because we make dangerous drugs illegal. And if you don't want to go to jail, then you don't traffic in dangerous and illegal substances. It's a pretty simple equation. And I don't think that the people of Virginia or the people of Pennsylvania, who are the closest to the founding that you were talking about earlier, who have chosen not to recreationalize or medicalize marijuana think they're any less free than the people in Colorado that have. And it's kind of an interesting equation when you look at where people are moving to. There's a U-Haul study, it's very interesting, it comes out every year about where states people are moving to and what states they're moving from. One of the biggest states there's an exodus from is California. Also happens to have one of the most lax drug law enforcement, be one of the most lax drug enforcement states in the country. Marijuana is more available in California than almost anywhere else, and yet people are leaving California. Guess where they're going to? They're going to Texas. Texas is getting thousands and thousands and thousands of Californians by the year. I doubt Californians are leaving for Texas where marijuana is not legal because they're going there to enslave themselves. They're going for real kinds of freedom. They're going for real kinds of opportunity. And marijuana has nothing to do with that equation. In fact, when people move because of marijuana, it's because there are drugs and marijuana in their communities. That's what makes them move, and that's why Colorado is seeing an influx of homelessness.
Hold on to that mic, please. Question from the audience. Would you call the police on your child if you caught them smoking cannabis?
Is that for me?
Let's start with Seth on this one, and then back to Mark. Would you call the police on your child if you caught them smoking cannabis?
Well, probably not. I don't know what the question is trying to get at, but I probably wouldn't. But I'll tell you what I would do. I would educate them, and I would talk to them about why that was happening and what it was that was causing that, and I would show them the harms of marijuana. And if they didn't stop, and they continued, and if they were creating a health risk to themselves, you know what I would do? I would take them to rehab. And I would do everything I possibly could to get them to stop doing it. And if it at some point had to involve law enforcement, you bet I would involve law enforcement. Because at the end of the day, Carroll O'Connor was right when he lost his son to drugs. He asked a rhetorical question, and he had it on TV. What would you do to keep your kids off drugs? And his answer was, anything you can. Anything you can.
Anybody who would call the cops on their own kid because they had marijuana, that's where CPS ought to be getting involved and taking kids away from crazy parents. That's the most ridiculous thing I think I've ever heard. Incidentally, my friend Tom Dean just handed me, I didn't say you said that.
I don't know what your answer is.
That was the question. I would, just to be clear, no, I would never call the police on my kids for using marijuana. I would first determine if they were using it responsibly. If they were, I wouldn't have any issue at all with it, so long as they were competent, because my kids could be of any age, right? My friend Tom Dean just handed me an almost endless list of health organizations that are calling for the immediate legalization of marijuana. My point here is this: to get bogged down in whether marijuana is good for you or is bad for you misses the entire point of this debate. I could concede, even though I don't agree, that marijuana is bad. I could concede that marijuana is addictive, and my response is, so what? If you want to have a free society, people need to be free to make even bad decisions for themselves. I think it's bad to eat too much animal protein and saturated fat. I agree with ex-Mayor Bloomberg that those big sugary drinks are horrible for you. They have no redeeming nutritional value at all. He's right. Should we get into a debate with Mayor Bloomberg about whether big sugary drinks are good or bad? Where I part ways with Mayor Bloomberg is whether he gets to determine that because it's bad, I can't use it, and my kids can't use it, and what kind of message does it send to the children when they can pull into Circle K and have one of those big, giant, sugary drinks? If you think that that's what a free society is about, the government determining, some people determining what is appropriate health risks for others, and then imposing it by force upon them, that isn't a free society. If Seth is right about the horrible harms of marijuana, then persuade me to teach my kids not to use marijuana. Don't cram it down my throat at the barrel of a gun at risk of going to prison. That's disgusting, and I would submit un-American.
Okay, I'll take that challenge. Here are 10 studies. I want you to read them and get back to me and tell me you would have no problem with your child using marijuana. Marc makes a fundamental philosophical categorical error when he talks about Mayor Bloomberg and sugary drinks. It's the same error people make when they talk about tobacco and alcohol. These are things that are already legal. These are things whose genie is far out of the bottle, whose ship is far sailed. I'm talking about taking something that about 8% of our population across the country uses and keeping it at 8%, rather than making it legal so that it can skyrocket. That's all I'm talking about. There's a difference between taking something legal and making it illegal, which is nearly impossible to do, and taking something dangerous that is illegal and making it legal. And once we do that, we're going to have the same problems we had with alcohol and tobacco, because no one's talking about banning those, and we're not going to ban them, and it's not the responsible thing to do now. We have to suffer the consequences. We have to pay the billions of dollars in health consequences from those dangerous substances, because once upon a time, too, people looked at those health studies and said, yeah, but maybe they're wrong. I'm here to give you study after study after study after study after study and ask you what, if any of them, are right.
And on that note, we've reached our time limit tonight. I want to thank both of our speakers tonight, Seth Leibsohn and Marc Victor. Please give them a vigorous round of applause. Thanks to our organizers. I'd encourage you all to think about what you heard tonight, and as we do in news business, fact check what you heard tonight. There was a lot of facts, a lot of studies thrown out there. This debate is going to go on for the next year plus, I think, and it will only get more intense, and it's pretty intense already. Thank you again. Thank you for watching us on LawBrain.com. And Carlos?
Radio shows.
Oh, yes. Okay. To be honest, I wasn't sure you were still going to do that.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
Okay, each of our...
not to.
Very good. They are gentle. So before the debate, Marc and Seth agreed to be on each other's radio shows. And so...
We think this is an important issue that deserves more than 40 minutes. And so both of us do radio shows. I've invited Seth to come on my radio show, the Attorney for Freedom show, which he's agreed to come on a week from tomorrow. Seth will be on my show for 1 hour. We'll explore this topic further. I've also agreed to come on Seth's show, which I think is going to be next week at some point. But check out Seth's website, which is...
You can go to, just Google my name, you'll find it. It's the first hit, 960 Patriot.
And I'll do my best to straighten him out on his show. Thank you.
All right, thank you all very much. Thank you all for coming.
Richard, what'd you think about the debate tonight?
I thought the debate was great. It was really nice to see two sides getting together and explaining what they feel is the right point. One of the biggest things that I got out of it is it's a situation where at least we're talking. At least we're talking about this debate. And that's very important. And that's one of the key issues here that I saw here. Now, one of the things that I felt Seth was pushing more than Marc was the fear factor. The fear factor is a huge tactic that is used for this, and because of that, I think people kind of shy away from it. But if you really sit down and talk about the issues, I think you really do, and you can see that Marc's point in this. I'd agree with him.
Okay. Richard, you're an awarded personal injury attorney in Arizona, right?
I am.
Okay. You deal with auto accident cases?
Yeah, I've been practicing for over a decade, and I've handled thousands of automobile accident cases, slip and falls, dog bites. I've handled them all. One thing that I've never seen, and I have peers that are in the industry, never has anybody been on marijuana on any of these accidents. It's been alcohol, or it's just been inattention. So, to the point that marijuana and how it affects personal injury cases, I personally don't see it. I don't see it. None of my peers have come to me and have said, hey, listen to this case. The guy was hiring marijuana, ran into somebody. It just doesn't happen.
Andy, you're a criminal attorney.
I am.
And what's your initial reaction to tonight?
Well, I love the debate tonight. I thought they got to the core issue at hand. And honestly, they were just throwing statistics and studies back and forth. And kind of like Marc said, you can believe whatever of these you choose. You're always going to find tons on both sides of the table. But I think what Marc really addressed that should be at the center of the issue here is there's a freedom argument to be made. There's a freedom argument about what Papa government can and can't say that you can put in your body. And I think that he brought that out the way that, honestly, Seth never really addressed.
So it seems that you might have been the catalyst of this debate happening in itself, and it gaining momentum, because Bill Montgomery maybe said a few things that he shouldn't have said when you asked him a few questions. What's your response to the media attention that it's gotten, and also what's your response to it possibly being a catalyst for this second debate going on?
I think it's great. Mr. Montgomery definitely did misspeak. He did apologize to me. I did not apologize to him.
So maybe you could tell us a little bit what happened behind closed door when Marc Victor got you guys together and tried to get you guys to a little bit more on the same page. Can you tell us a little bit what happened in that meeting? He didn't want the media involved, so...
No, and I didn't either, really. Boy, that's a tough one. It was really kind of personal, but it was...
Was his demeanor as boisterous and belligerent and obtuse as he was when he was speaking in front of?
He was quite different. He was apologetic. He told me I wasn't the enemy, but as we talked more and more, I felt I still am the enemy. I am a patient. I always will be a patient, and I use cannabis recreationally in place of alcohol that kills my brain cells, and cannabis heals my brain cells. And I don't want to kill my brain anymore. I'd like to heal my brain and keep healing my body. And I just find Mr. Montgomery offensive to this day. I believe he's uneducated what cannabis, what marijuana, how it can work as a medicine. And this debate tonight, Mr. Vicker always makes excellent points, and Seth, his points were very poorly taken, I thought. He never did answer Mr. Victor's question on how he proposed to end the drug war. I would love to hear that question answered someday.
So, round one with Mr. Victor versus Montgomery, who do you think won that debate?
Mr. Victor, obviously.
And now we're at round two. Who do you think won this debate? Was it Seth Leibsohn or Mr. Victor?
Mr. Victor's winning all of them. Anyone for going backwards and not legalizing is supporting the drug cartels. Mr. Victor put it out excellent. I think how he wants to put them out of business, and I think the war is already over. I think we've won. I think legalization's coming. I think it's coming in 2016, and they need to be educated. I'm also concerned. One thing I share with Mr. Montgomery and Mr. Seth is the education and what this is doing. And I think we need to educate the young people on respecting this medicine and not overdoing it, not abusing it, and getting in trouble. And that's where we get in trouble. Freedom, we need to be responsible.
So where do you think things are going to go from here?
They're going to go up. We're going forward. Legalization is coming. It's going to be a new day. It's going to be a better day. We're going ahead. We're not going backwards. The plant is not bad. People that use cannabis recreationally are not enemies. They are not evil people.